Anybody?
Yes.
Thanks, Travis. So let's get rolling at 6 o'clock and we got stuff to do. Welcome to Beginning Pigs. My name is Jason Detzel. I'm a livestock educator for Ulster and Orange County right now. I farm in Columbia County and I mostly farm cattle now. That's what I ranch, but I've raised a lot of pigs in the past and I teach the Cornell Small Farms Pastured Pig course. So what we're going to do is, and you're welcome to turn your cameras on if you want. Nice dollhouse. That's cool, Travis. If you guys want to ask questions while we go along, jump right in. I'm going to start off with the beginning pig presentation, and then I'm going to, if we have time, which we usually do, this doesn't take that long, I'm going to hop into the pastured pig pitfalls and perils, the 10 biggest mistakes people make with pastured pigs, and they apply to regular pigs too. So again, if there's something, I'm not gonna be able to read the chat, it's just me. So if you want to say something, just unmute yourself and get it out there, because let's just talk about it when we're dealing with it in the presentations, you know? So without further ado, let's start with pastured pigs. Let's see. Okay, so. Okay, cool. So some quick things to know about pigs. They're super smart, as some of you may have realized. They're the fourth most intelligent animal on Earth. They're omnivores. There's no such thing as vegetarian pigs. There's also no such thing as vegetarian chickens, if you see that label. I find that strange. But they eat everything. My pigs they love snails, slugs. If they find dead deer in the woods from previous hunting years, they'll eat the rotted carcass of that. Obviously, they eat grass, nuts, everything. Omnivores like us. Obviously, they eat grass. They don't have sweat glands. So obviously they need to wallow at times. You'll see, pigs get a bad rep because they wallow in their own feces. That's only the last resort. If you give them that option, they will take it because it's the only way they're going to survive. Pigs typically will poop in the same spot every day. They'll pee everywhere, but they're pretty tiny little creatures. And they're prolific. We bred them genetically, to be able to, be able to put out 8 to 12 piglets per birth. That's a lot. We've made it that way, but pigs generally, even in nature, are pretty prolific. So, real quick, pig talk. A boar is an adult male. A barrow is a castrated male. A sow is a female. Obviously, a gilt is a female that hasn't been mated yet. Sometimes you'll hear the word shoat instead of piglet, which is pretty common. And then the ones that you guys as beginners are going to be focused on are growers and feeders. Those are the animals you're going to buy already weaned, and you're going to grow up as your first year, because that is the easiest way to raise pigs, and that's the way you should do it. You can get into birthing. I just don't recommend it for your first year because there's so many issues that come up. You have to retain a boar. You have to correctly feed your sows so they don't get too fat. Then you have to deliver the babies. Then you have to have a place to keep them safe and warm and survive. But most of the pictures on this presentation are my pigs. So this black pig, you can hear, has a lot of stuff on its face, and that's whey. That pig is really fat too. So I fed that pig on whey, but we'll get to that a little bit later, some of my mistakes. These are also my pigs. Look at my fencing there. It's 2-strand electric. That's a pretty simple fence. Pigs have a really hard time jumping, so it's pretty common to see them like that. Pigs don't require a lot of land. Many folks raise pigs in a semi-confinement, semi-free range in their backyard. That's great, but as long as you can deal with the pig poop and disturbance in your backyard, so they're really going to make a moonscape out of anything you give them. By the way, I'm going to send you all this presentation, and I'm going to send you a bunch of materials. So don't feel like you have to write all this stuff down. You're going to get it all in written form anyway. Pigs can improve land, but the land needs rest. People think they can, I'm going to rehab my farm. I'm going to put 20 pigs out in the pasture. They're going to make it better. No, they're going to destroy it. What really makes the pasture better is that time to rest and kind of recuperate and incorporate all that disturbance into the ground. Nature craves the disturbance, and pigs are really good disturbers. You just got to give the land time to come back. They work really well in integrated farming programs because they're the waste eaters. They love to eat leftover fruit, veggies, whey, all kinds of farm byproducts are really good for them. We'll get more to this later though. Feeding this waste products doesn't necessarily mean they're going to gain weight, so keep that in mind, okay? They're highly trainable. Most people love pork and sausage with a few religious exemptions, and they're really good at being raised in the woods, but there's a lot of caveats that go with that too, so. And they're really fun. Pigs are great. I love cattle, but pigs are a close second for me as far as livestock. So here's the basics of what we're going to go over: feed, water, blah, blah, blah. What's important about this though is here's another. These are young piglets that I have. They must be this might be the first or second day they're on my farm, but you look how my training setup is set. You have to train pigs with electric fence. When a pig comes with electric fence, it doesn't back up when it gets struck. It goes forward. It runs through it. So you will lose your piglets, and your pigs will get out no matter what. But in the beginning, when you're training to an electric fence, you need to have a physical barrier behind it. So you'll see that I have a cattle panel covered in woven wire fencing. There's no way they're getting through that. They would if they had enough time, but in this situation, they're not. And the electric fence is there and supercharged. I also like to run. I'll show a picture later of how I like to do my training because we want the pigs to get a bite from the fence. They have to. It's to keep them safe and healthy. So we want them to encounter the fence on their first day. And we want them, if they are shocked, to not go through it. So usually the first couple of days, I spend those days out there with them, just observing them and watching them and having fun. And by the way, if you're a farmer, you need to see your animals every day. If this isn't the best part of your day or one of the best parts of your day, then stop doing it because it's not for you. And that's okay. There's a million other things you can do. But farmers should be out there with your animals, with your vegetables, whatever it is, every day. So you know when something's wrong, you know when something's right. And in a case like this, you better be there because if one of them bops through that fence, you're going to be in big trouble. Okay, first thing I'm going to talk about is housing. I'm sorry there's so many words on this slide, but pigs need protection from extreme weather, especially heat, I would say. So the first thing pigs need to have is enough room to feed, stand, lie down, and stretch out. And they like to stretch out a lot. So I think they really need a lot of room. I know they need a lot of room. They're also very social animals. That's where the word pig pile comes from. So these pigs will cuddle and get on top of one another and do all that stuff because that's what they do. And it serves them. They must have ventilation and fresh air. It's super important. Even in the dead of winter, they need to have ventilation on the top. This goes for all livestock. One of the worst things you can do is bring a bunch of livestock into a barn and close the door because all the bad guys in the respiratory system are going to come out, they're going to breed, and they're going to be shared between everybody. Pigs have to be out of the wind. They have to be dry. That's it. Cold will kill your pigs for the most part, but cold and wet will very quickly kill your pigs. So it has to be dry. It has to have a roof to protect them from rain, and it has to have some ventilation and enough room to stand and lie down. Now I'll show you this because does this picture provide really what the pigs need? Yes and no. I mean, in my opinion, I think that they're a little tight. I know, not even opinion, I can tell you they're stressed from being in this tight of a package here. I think these pigs need more room, but they are dry, they are clean, and they are not getting wet from the rain. So it's yes and no, it depends on how you want to do it. Most of us are not going to be raising animals in a confinement setting like this because we're not going to have the capability to both build and drain a manure pile, manure pit, a manure pool, a huge giant thing of poop. So that's why we raise ours outside. Here are some options for you. So, you know, it can be anything and farmers are intuitive, but you'll see here these pigs, these shelters are out of the rain for the most part. They're dry and they're ventilated. A lot of folks like to use those little living hay barn that's down here on the bottom. And that's pretty cool. The pigs eat a lot of bedding too. They will eat the hay. Just like us, they enjoy salads and they eat them a lot. I think pigs, like most animals, like dogs, find it to be a tonic. So the more bedding you can have in there, the better. Another thing I like about all these shelters here is that they're mobile. They can all be moved. And that's really important because, like I said, the pigs make a moonscape out of the land. Like, it's funny because this one on the top left with a little bit of straw and hay coming out the front, the metal one, the pigs haven't really been there, I can tell. I mean, on the one next to that on the top with the wooden shelter, you can see the pigs have definitely done some damage on there. So moving it is super important because the pigs are going to really damage the land. They're going to make it into a moonscape and they're going to compact it. And what needs to happen is plants need to come back in, recolonize that, put their roots down and break up the compaction and start working through some of the waste and disturbances out there. So my point is you should be able to move this every year. A lot of people, I used to rotate my pigs every day or every week in the summer, and then in the winter they would go to one spot. Then next summer they go to another spot, and then winter they go to a different spot, and they would never return to the same place for 2 years. And then also has to do a lot with parasites. So these shelters are all perfectly adequate. Just remember, dry, out of the rain, and out of the wet. I do want to mention something too about heat though. Heat is far more detrimental than the cold to the pigs. The pigs have a massive layer of fat. I mean, they're really amazing animals. To put it in perspective, the thickest skin on our body is like 1/16 of an inch on the bottom of our foot. And I believe that pig skin is like 1/8 of an inch. So it's, you know, a little more than double the thickness of our skin. And they have like sometimes a 2-inch layer of fat over their body if you're feeding them correctly. It's the heat, you can imagine, that really gets them because they have that fat and that thick skin. So they have to have shade in the summer. That's why they, again, because they can't sweat. So this is just as important to have an adequate shelter in the summer, if not more so than even in the winter. Of course, they would die in weather like this, but they would mostly be okay. I love deep bedding. There's a lot of different folks that use deep bedding. I do too. The advantages is, and these are really low. A lot of people do this. They'll take a hoop house, they'll run pigs in it in the winter, then and sometimes chickens too, but you're not supposed to do that because they can share flu. So you didn't hear that from me. But they'll run these things, these pigs inside for the winter. Then they'll take them out to be on pasture for the summer, and they'll grow things inside this high tunnel. Now remember, you're going to have to get rid of a lot of the manure in there. The manure from a pig is very hot. It'll burn plants. So you're going to need to compost it first. The great thing is, though, if you're using deep bedding, you have a ton of carbon in there with your nitrogen. So with the poop, you have the straw, and that makes great compost if you let it sit for 6 months to a year outside and turn it. So what my point is, if you are going to use a hoop house, you are going to use deep bedding, you cannot leave the bedding in there, and you need to find a way to move it. Even if you have a little tiny house and you're going to scoop that out at the end of the year, you better have a robust back, because there's going to be many hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of compacted manure and hay in that room. And it's really tough to break up without a machine. The disadvantages to deep bedding in your house, and I used to do this in my little tiny house. So picture the size of a small shed. What I would do is I would push a round bale into there, or I'd lift the shed up over the round bale, and this big round bale, those big round ones would be inside the shed, and the pigs would eat it, they would play in it, and they would burrow into it throughout the winter. So if you were to go out there first thing in the morning, you wouldn't even see them. They're all inside the hay, huddled up, keeping warm, which is just what we want them to do. Then when the time comes at the end of the year, I could lift that house up, I could scoop that and move it to a new compost pile, or more likely I'll just compost it right there and use that on my garden or some other part of the farm later in the year. So you really can't go wrong with deep bedding. The only disadvantage really is it's going to cost a little bit of money, and you're going to have to move it at some point. Okay, that's pig housing. Sorry, I have a little bit of a tickle in my throat tonight. Let's talk about nutrition, though. They're like humans. They're not ruminants. They can't digest the protein and amino acids in grass like ruminants can. So they need protein, they need energy, they need minerals, and yeah, that's pretty much what they need. And they need fiber too. The biggest limiting factor for your feed program is water. Pigs are really sensitive. They need clean and cool-ish water. They really, it's a really important thing. We'll talk more about waters in a minute, but it's super vital to them. They love to forage, and they'll eat everything. The only things I know my pigs would never eat would be onions, citrus, and raw potatoes. They will eat cooked potatoes, but I've never seen one eat an onion. I have heard of some eating some grapefruits, but none of mine have ever done that. But they will definitely root around. They'll dig up snails. They'll dig up anything that's underground. They'll dig it up, like acorns that squirrels left. Like I said, they'll eat detritus, and I've seen them eat dead bodies or dead animal bodies out in the woods. So they're a true omnivore. Ideally, they should have access to it at all times during the day. It makes them more efficient. Now, we're not going for the most efficient program here. We are going for some efficiency. We want our animals to gain weight. We want to be able to sell them or eat them and make money or be full. But if you do want to, it's best to keep food in front of them all the time. It also prevents some aggression. There's always going to be a pecking order in your pigs, and those dominant ones are always going to eat and drink first. So if there's a limited amount of food for the 10 minutes, the dominant ones are going to hog it, and the other ones aren't going to get anything. So really, keeping food out there all the times can do a lot for you. And think about too, really quick, where you're going to store this. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's going to be a lot of food. I really like raising cattle because essentially I'm a grass farmer. I grow grass and the cattle eat it. I don't bring them any food, but with pigs, you're going to be bringing them food. So if you are a beginner, oh, sorry, have something to say? Mora?
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't muted. Sorry.
No big deal. No big deal. Okay. If you are a beginner, you need to stick with the TMR, which is called a total mixed ration. This is something that somebody made, and you can buy it at your local feed store, but I highly recommend is find a local feed mill. And there are some in the area. These people have been in business for hundreds of years. They know exactly what they're doing. They're going to give you a product that probably is very local, that has the correct amount of minerals and salts in it, and that you can feed your pigs without any worry. And if you have questions, you can ask them about it. So that is your best option. And again, I would take a local feed mill any day, and it'd probably be cheaper over a big box store. And if you are going to be farming, remember, some of you may be tax exempt in New York State. I'm not going to get into the legalities of it, but if you are, you're not going to pay taxes on things you buy for the farm. So keep that in mind. When you go buy this stuff, they might ask you if you're tax exempt. You need to bring a form with you. Get a little off topic, sorry. Okay, here's a big lesson tonight. You can only supplement, you cannot substitute. You can only supplement feed, you cannot substitute feed. What I'm saying is you cannot get in the mindset that I just got a ton of pumpkins, I'm gonna only feed pumpkins this week, and they're gonna just eat that. I have a bunch of whey. I'm going to feed that. I have a ton of bakery waste and bread. They're not getting any grain this week. If you are in the business of raising an animal to put on weight, which means you're going to eat it basically, you need to feed it appropriately. So never substitute that TMR, never substitute that total mix ration, never substitute that real feed that's in front of them. You can supplement with anything you like that you think they're going to eat. Hell, throw some onions out there. They probably won't eat them, but you can do it as long as you don't take away the TMR. So whey is a really good one, but if you have old spent brewer's grains, those are okay. They're not as good as people think because all the energy in that went into making alcohol to get us drunk. So there isn't a lot of energy left in those grains. So keep that in mind. If you're getting, some people like to get a bunch of free stuff from Walmart or Target or whatever, old veggies, but there's not a lot of nutritional value in vegetables. They're mostly water. And if your animals have access to pasture and growing things, they're getting enough of that vitamin C and beta carotene from them. Another thing people forget about too is this free food from Walmart or something is you have to open the packages, then dispose of all the packages. It can be really time consuming. I also hear a lot of people telling me they're going to get stuff from restaurants. Well, that's great, but it's a huge pain in the butt. You got to go, you have to talk to the owner, designate an area for them to put these food scraps, and then pick them up very quickly because they're not going to want rotten food scraps sitting around there. If there's meat in it, you have to pick it out. You shouldn't be feeding meat to pigs. It's gross, unless it's dead and they naturally find it. They don't really eat meat like that. I guarantee that all the wait staff are not going to be as attuned to you are to your pig health, and there will end up being glass or silverware in there that could injure or kill your pig. So I'm not a big fan of getting leftover waste from the restaurant unless I own the restaurant or it's like my neighbor or something like that. I talked about potatoes. I talked about spent grains, and whey is really awesome. If you have a good supply of whey, there's a guy in Vermont, Walter Jeffries, who claims, and I tend to believe him, that he only raises pigs on whey and hay. That's all he feeds them. Now, whey is almost a perfect food for a pig, and he also pastures them and grows them pumpkins out. He's done all kinds of holistic stuff, but whey is almost a full feed for pigs. So if you had a really good supply of whey, this guy Walter I'm talking about has a truck that drives to his house and empties like 1,000 gallons a week there. That would be something where you could talk about really tweaking your nutritional, your mixed ration. But if you are using any of these bulk feeds or any other scraps, you can only supplement, not substitute. Get the TMR in front of them, especially if it's your first year. Don't mess around because you're setting up for disaster. This is what I want to talk about handling food. And it takes a while to talk about food because, again, we're a little bit in the materials handling business. We're bringing food to these animals. So the one that's really important is growers over 180 pounds. The typical weight you're going to want to slaughter a pig is about 250. If it's gaining a pound a day or maybe even 2 pounds a day, and you're at 180, that gives you 70 pounds to make up, which is going to take you at least 25 or 30 days. So for 25 days, that animal is going to eat 8 pounds of food a day. If you have 10 pigs, that means you have to bring 80 pounds of feed per day. Per week, you're talking, 8 times 7, 570 pounds of food a week. Where are you going to store that? There's a lot of different options, but you really shouldn't have more than a week or two of food on hand because the rodents will have a field day. It can get moldy and you would need a grain bin. So as you're designing your plan, and by the way, if you want some help with it, if you write a plan and want me to look at it, whether you're rotating, whether you're storing grain, I'm here for you. Hit me up, email me, call me, and we can just go over what you're doing and I'll be happy to help you out. But keep this in mind. It's a lot of material to store on site. And these are some different types of feeders. Do not use these plastic barrels. That top one, the blue one on the right, I built those. They last about a day. Pigs are 250 pounds of muscle. They will ruin everything you give them. Same with this little rinky dinky plastic one on the ground up here too. The bowls aren't really good for anything. So you really need to get a dedicated pig feeder. And again, I talked about the fight when there's dominant things going on. So make sure that there's enough room for most of them to eat at the same time, then it suits your needs. These Brower ones can hold a few tons of feed at a time. And there is a grower named Joel Salatin down in Virginia, and he just puts a ton of feed out. And then when that ton is done, he moves the pigs. Now that makes a lot of sense in some ways because let's say you have 100 pigs on an acre, they're going to go through that in probably, 2 weeks, a ton of feed, and it's time to move them. And they've done a number on the ground. If you have 50 pigs in there, it's going to take them, 4 weeks. So they're less big, or there's less of them. They're probably not as big. They're going to do less damage to the ground. So you can go that route. It's just kind of a neat way to do it. We'll talk more about Salatin later. I've built these wooden ones with the flap doors on them. They work great too. They keep the water out, but a purpose-made pig feeder can go a long way to keeping your food healthy and nourishing for the animals. Okay, water. I told you how much pigs need water. The problem with pigs and water is they like to play in it, and we know that they want to wallow in it. So you have to have a pig-proof water. If you look down the two women down here, or whoever the heck's done this, you'll see that pig is trying to get in the trough, get in that water, and they will do that. They'll foul it, they'll poop in it, they'll pee it. They cannot be in there. So a lot of people have switched to pig nipples, these nipple waters. They work great. It's literally just that nipple that you plumb into some PVC or a gallon bucket like that. If this was mine with the bucket up here on the top, the barrel, the blue barrel, I would have that strapped down with ratchet straps. There's no way it's going to stay up there because you're going to jump on it. But the nipples can work great. You can have as many as you want. The first day, you just kind of take a rubber band and open it up so the water comes out and they know where it is. There can be issues with those too. Sometimes the pigs will learn to just leave it open and they'll make a big pool there and mess around. So you may want to put some rock down, but as you experiment, you can try that. You can always just go with the big old bucket too. That works fine as long as they can't get in it. So if you have to place bars over the top, or, you know, if you go really big too, your pigs can drown. They're great swimmers, but they can't swim forever. And I've seen cases where people have had a very large 100 or 300 gallon tank that's big and round. They fill it up, a pig hops over the side, gets in and can't get out and dies in the water. So just keep in mind that can be dangerous. Whoops, sorry. Pigs in the woods. I'm going to talk more about pastured pigs a little bit later. These guys are fat. They're so slick and fat. These guys are over conditioned. I can tell you right now, those pigs were overfed, and I don't even know where the heck that was. But pigs will denude your land. They are really tough on land. Like I said before, they will make it into a moonscape, and that's not what you want. That's not sustainable. It's not going to be good for your land or the animals or your neighbors. So you really need to match the number of pigs to your area. But how do you do that? I'll talk more about that in a second, though. We talked about shelter. Pigs in the summer will benefit from a shelter, but if you have heavy tree area, you don't need a really dedicated shelter. They do just fine as long as it's nice and warm in the summer, and they tend to do just fine outdoors. You can always supplement, not substitute. Tree mast is beneficial. So tree mast is like acorns and black walnuts, hickory nuts, everything that grows out there. But here's the problem with that. I often get calls from folks telling me, hey, I heard about these pigs in Iberica in Spain where they just eat acorns. Well, I've been to Spain. I've seen the jamon that they make, and I'll tell you, it's not really true. What they do in Spain is they collect the acorns, they grind them up, and they add them to their general TMR feed. There are some pigs that do forage and only eat acorns and nuts and grass and stuff, but it's like 1 pig per acre, and it's like, you know, $700 per kilo or $1,200 a pound or whatever for that stuff. It's crazy. So your pigs cannot just live on acorns. Your pigs cannot forage for themselves in the woods. And when people tell me they're going to eat nuts, I'm always like, what are they going to eat in March? Because there's no nuts out there now. If it was a great year in September, they're all been hidden by the squirrels or eaten by everybody else out there. So it's animal abuse. You cannot do that. They need to have appropriate feed in front of them, especially if you're a beginner. If you're an advanced pig grower and you want to talk more about planting mass trees to supplement your animals, cool. That's great. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But beginners should not be messing with anything with feed in this regard until they understand what it takes to raise a pig and they've done it to the end. If you are going to raise pigs outside as opposed to having just a couple in your barnyard or your backyard, it takes a lot more planning. They're going to injure that land, so you're going to want to rotate them a little bit. You know, you're not going to want to come back there. You're going to have to check the fences. You're out there seeing the animals every day, but electric fence especially, you're going to have to walk the fence to make sure everything's working great. This picture here is also a 2-line, very thin fence. I like to use bright white fencing, and I'll usually flag it sometimes like a piece of tape so the pigs see it. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to talk about pasture pigs specifically after this, but let's get through the general pig stuff. Here are your general pig options. You can have pig panels, which I don't have any pictures of here. The pig panels are the big ones you can buy at Tractor Supply. They're 16 feet long. There's a picture of them later on. They're like welded together. They're sturdy as heck. You're not going to get through them, but they're expensive and they're only 16 feet long each. Those are a great way to use for training. They don't short out like an electric fence, and they can be kind of buried in the ground because the biggest strength of a pig to escape something is to use its neck. It puts its head underneath something and lifts, and they are extremely powerful because that's what they do. They root. Woven wire is your next option. That's often what you see used for goat fencing. So it's woven wire, like a chain link fence, and you can unroll it. It's pretty good. It's got some weak spots on the bottom. Again, it doesn't short out, but it needs to be taken care of. And it's expensive. And obviously, it's not mutable. You can't move it. And the last thing is electric. And that's all I use in my farm unless we're training or loading animals now. It's really low input. It's really cheap compared to building a really good fence, but it's only as good as the person monitoring it and the system itself. If you don't have that thing set up tip top, the pigs are going to get out. Pigs are the only animals I've ever seen test a fence like velociraptors. They've tested a lot, and I'm not really sure why. They will know within days if it's off, I guarantee it. So if you want some help building these other semi-permanent structures, the pig panels will wire, I'm happy to help you out. Let me know. I have a million things about that. But electric fencing is going to take more planning. So you're going to need some more things. You need a charger, you need grounding rods, you need the actual line. If it's not plugged into your house, you're going to need a battery or a solar charger. Solar chargers are great, but they don't really work well in the winter, although they are getting a lot better. And even in the summer, they can have their issues. They're heavy, they're unwieldy. But if you don't have electricity, you really don't have much options. So I have used solar powered panels. Actually, I have one right here to great effect for most of my life. In fact, this is one. Let me see. I don't know if you can see this in the camera. This is a pretty common Premier fence charger. That's a briefcase charger. You can't really see it because of my screen, but it's like literally like a briefcase, and it's got a charger in it. But this worked great for me. I think it was like $500, and the area that I need to for the pigs for a while. But again, it didn't work in the winter. That needs a grounding rod too, and that has batteries in it also. So ideally, if you have electricity, that's the best way to go by far, because those are far more powerful and far more useful. This is my cattle fence charger, which is about 40 times bigger than that, which is crazy. Anyway, okay, fencing. So electric fence stuff, just stuff to keep in mind. And I'm happy to talk about this too. I think we should do a class just on electric fences, maybe a freebie this year, because a lot of people make mistakes, including myself. You have to make that semi-permanent training area to begin with. You cannot bring pigs to your farm that have never encountered an electric fence and expect them to stay in it. It will not work. Okay, so you have to have a training area set up before you even buy the pigs. Have it set up, look around, make sure they can't get out, because once they get out as piglets, you're not going to get them back. Okay. Generally, when you're running electric, a lot of people just run one line right along where their nose is. So however tall they are, that's where you keep it. Pigs are terrible jumpers for the most part, and that's they explore the world and experience it through their nose. So that's where they're going to hit with the electric fence. The problem is that they do is because they have that snout and that head, they push soil up onto the electric fence and it shorts it out or it drops it below the soil. Another reason you as farmers need to be out there every day seeing your animals, monitoring your fences, sit down, hang out. They're great listeners. They're fun to watch, bring them treats. They're just so much fun. I mentioned solar chargers don't work in the shade. I didn't mention this though. Every piece of grass or vegetation touching your electric fence will begin to short it out a little bit. Just think of your fencing electricity like water flowing in, and every blade of grass like a little straw, just sucking a little bit of water out. So if you are setting a fence in a pasture, you're gonna have to mow that before you set it up in the summer. Mow that area. A lot of people use a weed whacker. If you're in the summer out in the woods, it's not as big a deal because we don't have as much vegetation. So keep that in mind. If you need a gate, pigs are so smart that when I just have an electric line, and let's say I'm running like a ladder system, like I want to moving them up a pasture and a ladder. So here's one day, here's the next day, here's the next day, they're going this way. If I take down this fence and drop it to the ground or move it, they'll still think it's there and they won't cross for hours, which is a problem because sometimes you want to get that fence, get them moved and pick up the fence that was behind them. So you need to give them some signal. What I used to do is take a regular old pallet, I'd run the electric fence over the pallet. And when I would take the fence down or drop it, they would cross. I would drop the pallet on the ground and they would walk on the pallet and go over, even though there's no fence anywhere. But they're so smart and they know that they're like, I'm not messing with this, even if I can't see it. So just a little special piggy tip. If you have these animals, you will have to restrain them at some point or you will have to move them. If there's a medical emergency, if there's a prolapse in birth, if you're loading onto trailers, you have to be able to move or tightly be able to trap the pigs. So you need cattle panels or you need really sturdy fencing for when that time comes. You probably should make yourself some pig boards, battle boards, batten boards, or all different names. It's just a board with two hands holes in it, like a regular old, whatever the heck they're called, plywood board. And pigs don't have object permanence. So they don't know that you're behind it or they can get away. So if you have that border from them, they will walk away from you. So a really great thing to build is an alley with a tub at the end. So a little circle, you can lead them in there with your bucket. They're in there, cool. The trailer's at the other end. Let's push them on the trailer. Another thing too, the biggest tip I can give you, one of the biggest ones, when you're loading your animals, if possible. So I rent all my equipment. Like if I don't have a trailer, so I have a driver come bring me a trailer. I'll bring it there 2 or 3 days before we load, and I will feed them exclusively on that trailer. That gets them used to it, because if you can't move the pig, if you can't convince the pig to get on the trailer, you're generally not gonna be able to pick it up and put it in. It took, for me, for like a 120-pound pig, it took 3 grown men to be able to grab one and put it in the trailer. And it was not fun. People got bit, and thank goodness the animal didn't hurt. It was an emergency. But think about your handling facilities. Think about how you're gonna do this and how you're gonna coerce that animal into the trailer. And the best way to do it, because remember, there's no shelters in nature. Animals are not used to a roof, and they're very leery of it. Feed them in there. Give them a cake. It might be a couple of their last days. Give them something sweet. And while we're here, we'll talk about that in a minute. So you need to have handling facilities. You need to think about it before you do it. You need ways to isolate animals. If an animal is hurt, the other animals will pick on it and try to kill it sometimes. It makes sense from a natural selection standpoint, but from ours, who we want to, we're helping to raise the animals, we don't want that. So having a way to isolate an animal that is injured or sick, because you don't want it spreading, is a really big idea. This woman here in the picture is a vet. She's using a snare to grab a pig. It works great. It's literally a snare you put on their snout and you hold them by the mouth. But if you've never touched a pig or grabbed a pig, you're in for a crazy fright, because they scream like you never heard in your life. They think you're trying to kill it. So they will scream as loud as they can. The other animals will come and maybe try to defend it. So again, this is where good handling systems come into place. If you can isolate that animal, do your vet work, do what you got to do on it, that'll really go a long way to keeping you and yourself safe, especially around piglets. Pigs can be extremely aggressive around piglets, so keep that in mind. Keeping your pigs healthy. Okay, like everything on Earth, disease is really 2 things. It's a vector, it's the disease itself, and then there's stress. So they have to both be there. So the less stress your animals experience, the healthier they will be. So our job really is to make their lives less stressful. And there's a lot of different diseases that can affect pigs, but for the most part, pigs are very, very hardy animals. If you have good water in front of them, if you have appropriate food, if they're stimulated, if they have the room and shelter they need to lay and roll around and be the piggies that they are, they will really do well. But there are a few things that do happen occasionally. I don't want to scare you, but if you're a farmer, you're going to be buying rubber gloves and lube and doing all kinds of things you never thought so, because you have to. You have to take care of these animals and things happen. Now, if you aren't breeding, you'll cut down on the lube and rubber gloves because you won't be doing as much of that. But you're still going to need rubber gloves. You're still going to need a scalpel. And I will send you a beginner pig vet checklist. You are going to have to intervene on your animals at some point. Just keep it in mind. Just like your animals will get out, you are going to need to intervene on them. So you need a vet kit. It's your responsibility. These animals are yours and you need to take care of them. Worms. Worms are a tough one. Most pigs are not really that affected by worms in pastured setting. They're pretty hardy. The folks who are growing in confinement have a lot more worm issues because it really takes 2 years for a lot of those worm eggs to die. Roundworms can be tough. They get into the liver, they're all around. So it's up to you when you get your vet before you get your animals, because you have to have a vet and you have to know them beforehand, because they may be too busy to come do like a consult just to meet you, but get to know them, because that's the person you're going to call at 3 a.m. when you have a serious problem. So get a vet. And they can give you recommendations for a deworming schedule. I'm not really going to give you on some of the documents I send you may have deworming schedules for you, but you don't need to go nuclear on these animals just because they could have parasites without knowing, because that's a really good way to build up resistance to parasites on your farm, or resistant, stuff on your farm. So what I would tell you is keep monitoring for worms. And the best way to do that is their size and weight and condition, how they look. And the best way you will know about that is if you're seeing your animals every day. You'll know immediately when one loses weight. Now, 90% of the time, what happens when pigs have a worm infestation is out of 10 pigs, we'll notice 2 that are skinny and acting weird. And why? Because they have the vector and the stress. Those are the low people in the totem pole. They're stressed, so those worms are able to do more damage to them. As they lose weight, it compounds because the bigger ones pick on them. They don't let them near the food or the water at all because they know they're sick, and they might even be aggressive towards them, and they get worse and worse and worse off. Typically, when that happens is I'll recommend that you separate those animals, or your vet may, and just treat those ones at that time. If you treat all the healthy ones, you run a risk of making a resistant bugs. I'm not going to get into that, but blanket treating your animals on a schedule is typically not a good idea. You want to really be selectively treating animals. And it goes with this. So if you see an animal losing weight, doesn't look good, call your vet, tell them you think you might have a worm problem. Maybe they'll come out. If you are in Ulster County, we have a fecal lab. If you take our fecal class, it's $20. You're welcome to come to use the lab for 1 hour for $5. Typically, each single thing at a vet would cost you $30. So if you have 5 pigs, it'd be $150 to check for parasites. If you come to the lab, it would cost you $5. You could easily do 5 in an hour. If you would like to take the fecal lab, it is called Small Ruminant Parasite Control. That's the course you'll see on the CCE Ulster page. So I encourage you to take it. It's a great course, and how often you get to look through poop in a microscope. Although if it's COVID's still up, we won't be doing it in person, but hopefully we can. Anyway, watch out for worms. They can be killers. They do happen. Typically, you won't get your livers back down here because there are some worms that live in the liver. I don't know if you guys eat pig liver anyway. I typically don't, but this is a picture of a liver that had worms in it, and that's what most butchers see in this area because they are prolific in our soils. Whipworms, tapeworms, I see not the biggest deal. I typically myself don't treat my pigs for tapeworm unless I see them in their younger stock. Like if they're an adult, I let it go. We sometimes forget that parasites evolved with us. They're literally a lot of times species specific, and they're not there to kill us. They want to feed. That's not their goal. And sometimes they can actually be an immune booster. So they are part of nature in some regard. They can boost an animal's immune system, but when they get to the point where they're affecting their health, that's when we have a problem. So again, something to discuss with your vet. If you see diarrhea, which we call scours in animals, then that would be something to really take a look at. But if you just see a little tapeworm sticking out their butt, you can still call your vet, but don't go crazy and go nuclear and treat the whole herd for this because you may be doing more harm than good. Mange and lice. This is something I don't see very often, but if I am going to see it, it's this time of year. And why is that? It's because the animals are temperature stressed. So if it's really cold and crappy, especially if it's raining a lot, they're just not happy. Just like us, I'm kind of depressed. I'm stuck in the house. Their immune system's down, and these parasites tend to proliferate on them. So you'll see in this picture up here on the top, that's mange. It's pretty easy to see. It's nasty. You can probably see the bugs in there. There's all kinds of topical treatments. You should definitely treat them immediately. Talk to your vet, or you can even buy over-the-counter stuff for this. It's just like people, probably the same type of stuff. So if you see them on there, treat it. They can't go to you. They're species specific, but they drive those animals absolutely bonkers. So ulcers, I wouldn't worry about this. You're not going to see it if you're running just a few pigs, but keep in mind, this is where buying from a certified and experienced feed producer really goes a long way, because those people have been growing feed forever. And they know exactly what they're doing. Okay, these are my pigs. All these piglets died. Breeding is not for the faint of heart. 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 a.m. That's true. It is 3 for them from moment of conception to actually giving birth. Breeding is hard sometimes. Pigs are tough. If you have multiple pigs and you need it, are you going to retain a boar, a 600-pound boar? You're going to feed them all years to breed them? Are you going to AI? Because you certainly can do that. But I don't know if you know this, but a pig's vagina is like a corkscrew, just like its tail. So you have to get a special plug to insert that sperm, and it looks like a corkscrew. It's not easy. It's one of the more difficult animals to artificially inseminate, excuse me. Then you're gonna have to treat this animal right. You can't let pigs get too fat when they're pregnant, because they will abort. You have to watch for disease. You have to be ready to separate those animals when they do go in and start giving birth into different stalls, typically, or different areas. If it's raining outside, even in the middle of summer, they're giving birth, you have problems on your hands. So there's a lot more management and production issues when you are dealing with breeding. If you would like to get into that, we have an entire presentation I'm happy to show you about breeding your pigs, and we have lots of guidance on that too. But as a beginner, I think you should go out and buy a few growers, whatever you can handle, 2, 3, 4. Buy your TMR, feed them all summer, slaughter them in the fall, and then, I have a lot more to talk about slaughtering in a minute. Slaughter them in the fall, and then give it to your friends, or maybe you can sell it, but don't go full blown into this, because maybe you don't even like pigs. When I first started farming, which was 9 years ago last week, I thought I would have everything, chickens, pigs, and I did. And then I was like, I don't like the smell of chicken poop on me 24 hours a day. And I love pigs, but I hate moving all this feed. So now I've just really distilled to be a cattle rancher. And I'm glad I didn't spend a whole chunk of money and time really getting to pigs, because it's not what I love to do. Again, you got to buy good semen, or you got to buy a good boar, because he's really the star. There's a lot more genetic complements from the boar than the sow in pigs for some reason. I don't know why. It's a genetic thing. And then biosecurity wise, you're bringing a boar or other pigs on your property every year, you got to be ready for that. They are definitely going to share diseases. It may not be bad, but biosecurity says you should have a quarantine for at least 30 days. So that's another thought about raising piglets. Oh, why did these piglets die? This is in my house. My first pig I ever bred had a prolapsed vagina. So it came out a little bit. I freaked out. It wasn't actually that big of a deal, but I took the piglets away because I didn't think she would survive. She ended up surviving, feeding, I don't know, 8 piglets, bottle feeding them 5 or 6 times a day, every like 3 hours, really is hard. And they don't do well and they ended up getting sick and dying. It sucked. And that may be the reason that I'm so adamant that you try to just do grow as your first year. If you want to do it, go for it. But it's just a lot more management stuff. Also, don't forget you're going to be castrating, maybe clipping ears, probably not clipping tails because we don't do that much unless it's production. But I'm trying to scare you a little bit because there's a lot more stuff when you start raising babies. Parents will know this. Common breeds of pigs. These big white ones on the top, these Chester Yorkshires are beautiful animals. My gosh, they're so long and lean. That's where you get the most bacon. You know, bacon wasn't even a product until they had, anyway, I'm not going to get into the history of bacon, but we didn't used to want bacon. We used to grow a lot fatter pigs in this country because we wanted the tallow and fat to make stuff. But now that we don't do that, the fat goes to waste. So we want really lean pigs. That's what these Yorkshires and Chesters up here at the top are. They're made for confinement. They're made to live indoors. The Berkshire is becoming super popular in the Duroc. These are still old breeds of pigs that are known to be very high quality. Another lesson for the day, other than substituting and supplementing, do not go out and buy expensive pigs for your first pigs project. Do not go out and buy anything expensive for your first project in case you don't like it. And even better, don't buy anything permanent. There is a huge pyramid racket that goes on in the animal world. It goes on in every specialized type of industry where people get the newest, latest craze, whatever it could be, whatever widget or animal, and they tell you there's only so many and they're rare. And if you grow them too, you will sell them for the price that I'm going to sell you them for. So, okay, these are $2,000, boars. I'm going to get them, I'm going to sell them. But what they don't tell you is that you're already too late to the game. There was 4,000 of those pigs last year sold in the United States, and the price, instead of being $2,000, now $200. Or you can't get rid of them. I saw it happen with those Aya Cremini chickens, the all black ones. I really want some. They've come down in price now too. And the what are the cute emo cows? Oh gosh. Anyway, the Highlanders, Scottish Highlanders. Yeah. With their long hair and their big, giant horns. They're beautiful. They're so cute, but they're everywhere now, and they're really tough to process because the butchers don't like them because of the horns and the long hair. So I see a lot of them for free now out there. So anyway, don't go buy these really expensive pigs because you're not guaranteed to be able to sell them for any real price, and people may not want them. And these are the animals you might make a mistake on. These are your first ones, just like me with that prolapse. That was actually caused by me accidentally because I bred that pig to a Yorkshire that was too big. So I made a production mistake that affected my animals and would have really affected my business. And I felt bad enough for the animal. Luckily, it lived. But again, just don't go buy these really expensive animals. Some other weird ones, or less, not weird, they're really cool. All pigs are fun. These Gloucester spots, that's one of the spots are becoming really popular too. The Hampshire, there's Poland, I like Poland, the land races. A lot of these are really old. If you want to raise heritage breed, that's great. But again, I don't recommend it for the beginning project. Buy yourself some nice mixed breed pigs. And why is that? There's something called hybrid vigor. If you have 2 really good species of pigs and you let them mate, they usually make a better pig in the middle, but it doesn't breed true. So don't be afraid to buy the runts that you find, wherever you find them. Now, where are you going to get your pigs? Well, a breeder or a pig farmer would be your best bet. They can answer your questions. They can talk about their vaccination schedule. I will tell you that a lot of you are probably going to be buying your pigs on Craigslist, and that's okay. But I have some tips about that. Don't be afraid of mutts. When you go to the farm, don't get tunnel vision and just stare at those pigs. Look at the whole place. Look at, is it tidy? Is it clean? I mean, and farms are not clean. There's poop everywhere and stuff. But is it look like a respectable place where someone's taking care of these animals well? Ask questions about the pigs. If they can't answer them, don't be afraid to walk away. Don't purchase someone else's problem, man. When were they vaccinated? Were they vaccinated? When were they castrated? What food are they on? Can I see the bag so I can try to match that type of food for the first few days? Or can I have 5 pounds of that feed or 10 pounds of that feed to take home with me to start easing them into the new feed that we have? Can I see the parents? this is your right. These are things you should be doing as a farmer. I would ask so many questions if I was buying an animal now, but when I first got into it, I had that tunnel vision. I was like, these look great, we'll take them. Also, too, when were they weaned? You don't want an animal that was weaned that week. You want an animal that's been weaned and been able to recover. Stress, stress, stress. That's the problem. You wean and castrate and all this stuff to the animal, and you take it away from its family, from its mother, it's going to be so sick. So best case scenario is to let it be processed. Usually people will castrate and tag and deworm and give iron shots the first couple of days. Then they'll wean at a later date, obviously, when it can come off the mom. And that's a really healthy animal. So just keep that in mind. They were, when I got here 9 years ago, I think I bought pigs for 75 bucks a pop. I'm betting you're going to be spending more like 125 each. So that's not outrageous. If you're going to get a bunch of pork out of it, just remember that it's going towards you. If you're trying to start a business out of it, you better start doing some penciling and some calculating. If you have a business plan, I am happy to look at it, by the way. Send it my way and I will play my favorite devil's advocate and tell you what I think needs some work or what might not work for you. So, because sometimes the best laid plans just don't end up coming out right. I mentioned heritage breeds. I think these are Ossabaws, and I don't remember what this other red one is, but again, they're out there too. There's some folks in Ulster County bringing Mangalistas, those hairy pigs. They're cool. Hey, if you like the, and I started mentioning heritage breeds from the conservation. There's a heritage conservation website will tell you what pigs are considered endangered, and hey, go for it. It could be a really fun project to grow some heritage pigs. Keep in mind though, from a reduction standpoint, these heritage pigs are never going to outproduce our improved breeds. So even though the Yorkshires and the Chesters are built more for indoor raising, they're going to produce a bigger carcass if they're raised indoors. So there's a catch to that. Heritage breeds will do better in outdoor settings typically because they have a little more fat content. They're a little more active typically, and they carry more fat, which makes them healthier than just those lean animals. So you can easily run Yorkshires outside in the summer, but if I had a sounder of pigs, I was leaving for a year over winter, I would have more heritage blood in them. That's me. See what your land can support too. If you look at this picture of the red pig too, that's pretty typical of a few days of damage. That's not a week even, I'll bet there. So just the ones on the right, that's more typical of what you're going to see from this moonscape. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this. I want to mention another, people always ask me, when should they move your pigs? And I talked about Salton moving his after they eat a ton of feed. What I say, if you're going to be rotating pigs, is you move them when 70% of the vegetation is used up. That can be eaten, that can be pooped on, that can be rolled on, that can be trampled, that can be dug up. When you only have 30% of green left in that area, it's time to move because it needs a little bit of residual health to recover. If you let it go to a moonscape, that will happen. Like if you leave your pigs in the same spot, for the summer for 6 months, it will literally be cratered and it will be so hard that water cannot infiltrate it and the water will just run off it. It may run into your waterway and dirty it or your neighbors or whatever. So moving before you get to that point, well before to it, moving when you have used 70% of the vegetation is a great way to make sure that you're not overusing that land. Now, ideally, you wouldn't come back there for 2 years. And if you are making your plan, that may work for you. If you can't do it that quick, then you got to figure something out because at some point your land isn't going to be able to take the amount of nutrients you're putting on it. You're going to end up having more problems. Butchering and marketing. Oh boy, this is a pain now. So the pandemic has caused major problems in our very small, very fragile processing system here in New York and the rest of the country. When you get pigs, you need to make your slaughter appointment on a good year. So if you bought pigs now, you should be calling to make a slaughter appointment in the fall because they will sell out before the fall. As far as I know, this year, they're already sold out. So if you have any pigs, you are not going to likely be able to get them USDA slaughtered in New York anyway this year. They're already filled. So if you cannot find a USDA slot, your other option is to find a custom spot. So you can also go state lines, by the way. And don't quote me on this, I'm not a lawyer or an ag and markets rep, but typically if you're going to a terminal transport, if you're going to slaughter an animal, you can drive it over state lines, but check with what state you're going to because they're all different. But there are USDA facilities and many in Pennsylvania too that may be to accommodate you. If you're going to sell to restaurants, if you're going to the farmer's market, if you're selling any piece of that animal, if I'm selling you a steak, a ham, a pound of bacon, it has to be USDA inspected. And that's tough and it's expensive. And like I said, there are no slots this year. So if you're going to do anything in pieces, you have to be USDA. In New York State, we have what are called customs processors. Those are the folks that do deer, but they also do livestock, and there are actually quite a few of them around. I actually slaughtered a cow on Monday using. He came to my place and did it. Um, if you do this animal this way, you cannot sell it in farmers markets. You cannot sell it in pieces or steaks to restaurants or to stores. It will actually, it's supposed to say not for sale stamped right on the label. There is a way around that. And the way around that is to sell the animals as halves and wholes before you slaughter them. So if my next door neighbor wants to buy a half a pig and split it with my other neighbor, as long as they do their cut sheet and pay me before I kill that animal, it's legal. And you could do an eighth of a pig too. At some point, it starts to get ridiculous. But with the cattle, I did 1/8 shares of cows. So you pay me $500 or whatever. It was about $550 for an eighth of my cattle ahead of time. You have your cut sheet, it's all filled out, and that's perfectly legal for have someone come to the farm, butcher it, or kill it, take it home, butcher it, and then give out those pieces. Those pieces on them say not for sale. They are not for sale. I sold that animal when it was still alive. That's the kind of catch. We are in serious trouble with processing in this country right now. They're working on getting laws passed. There's one called the Prime Act, but it's a major, major problem for us. So again, if you haven't heard me say it yet, if you are buying pigs now, or if you're looking to slaughter them next year, you're not going to be able to get them to a USDA plan. You can start calling now, and they might put you on a waiting list. So it's time, if you really want to do this project, you need to either figure out how to slaughter it yourself, which is perfectly doable, and in my opinion, very easy for a pig, or find a custom slaughter person, those people who do deer, to come do it for you or do it at their house. I talked about putting them on the trailer too. So usually when you're gonna, slaughter 4 or 5 pigs, you have to load them on a trailer and drive them there. So you better have a trailer and a truck to do that. I don't want to carry insurance on a trailer all year and make sure the lights work. I don't want to have a dedicated truck to pull my dedicated trailer. So I don't own those things. I hire someone to do it. It costs me like $100. I have none of the stress. Just my insurance or just my registration on a truck and trailer would be over $100. So I think it's highly worth it to find someone to help you out with that instead of buying all that stuff. So keep in mind, slaughter day stinks, man. You got to figure out how to get the animals there, get them onto the trailer. They're going to be losing their mind. They never remember being in a car. It's very traumatic for them. It's just not a good day. So I like to slaughter animals on the farm. It's quick. We use a bullet. We bleed them out right there. It's done. And then we move on with our day, and a lot less stress for all of us. You want to sell it in restaurants or pieces, USDA. If you want to sell it to your neighbors or give it away from free, it can be custom, or you can do it yourself. Okay, this is the end of the beginning one, and then I'm going to talk about some other stuff, but I just want to talk about, and we'll take a little break here, 3 very successful pig farmers that you should check out. One is Joel Salton at Polyface in Virginia. That's where I got my start, down in Virginia. I went to visit him. I got the farming bug. I was a pediatric behaviorist for the Air Force for 10 years before I started farming. And I met this guy, and I wanted to farm. So that's what happened with that. He's the one who runs a ton of feed. In a month, it's gone, and then he moves them. You can see they've been in there for a while, those pigs. That's a moonscape, right? Look at it. Underneath him is Walter Jeffrey. He's the guy I was talking about in Vermont that raises pigs just on whey and hay and, some cucurbits and stuff and pumpkins. He's real cool. And he has a crazy big blog. I mean, a sick blog. If you go to sugarmountain.farm.com and look at his blog, there's, 1,000 hours of reading about pigs on there, and it's cool. And in that picture, actually, you can see one of his hay troughs. That trough is gigantic. He's pumping that down from an even bigger trough, but that's what he feeds the pigs. He's using some of the electro netting. Oh, I forgot to mention the electro netting. Sometimes people do use that in temporary, but it's really tough to maintain. It's really tough to move, and it shorts out very easily. So maybe not the best thing. So check out Sugar Mountain Farms blog. It's incredible. Check out Salton. He is a really interesting link between industrial and like homestead agriculture. He's right in the middle there. But he does a lot of regenerative stuff that I super respect. And he's also willing to change stuff when he thinks it's not right. And then Bruce King is this guy I found out about in Washington State. He hates Walter Jeffries, and he bet him 10 grand online that he can't raise his pigs just on whey and milk, or whey and straw, I guess. And I don't think Walter entertained the offer, but this guy also has a very big blog. It's called like Meat, and he feeds his animals, his pigs anyway, a lot of leftover produce from industrial settings, from like people that are making food products, or like Walmart's. He'll literally get 10 tons and dump it in there and let them feed on that. So all 3 of them have different strategies. Joel's feeding a straight TMR, which is pastured animals, letting them eat out there. They go into a hoop house in the winter. Walters spends most of the year out, all year outside. He has some shelters that they come in the winter, his breeding stock. Then obviously Bruce in Washington State is in hoop houses and outdoors also. That's the end of that. I noticed someone said something in the chat, and then I got another little presentation to show you guys. Well, let's talk. What do you guys want to talk about here? A custom slaughter at your farm will be slaughtered and packaged ready for the freezer, question mark. Sven, yes. Sven, can you unmute yourself? Are you there? I don't hear you. Well, oh, you cannot. Okay. Shoot. It depends on the butcher. So yes, this butcher who's a custom guy for me came to my farm, killed the cow, brought it home. Excuse me, brought it to his house, butchered it, and I came back to me in little packages of 1 pound of ground beef, 700 pounds of meat, packages of brisket, packages of steak. Yes, it is in little spots. You could, so yes, when I say it's a quarter and eighth, it's a quarter and eighth split up in that meat. So hopefully that answers your question there. Who else has got something to ask about? Someone's got to have something. We just covered a ton of stuff. Maura, you're so excited to talk earlier? No? Okay. Well, if no one's got anything, I'm here for you to help, so let me know. Let me move on to something else. We just covered a lot of stuff, and I am also gonna send you a bunch of stuff via email, but keep in touch with me too as you move along through this process, especially if you're just planning. I'm totally happy to just plan along with you. So I'm not gonna go through this whole thing, but I am gonna show a little bit of this. It's perils and pitfalls of pastured pigs, blah, blah, blah. This is part of our 6-week pastured pig course specifically. So it's a lot more than pastured pigs, but I just want to talk about a few things in here because there's 10 things and they apply to you guys too. Pigs outside need to be hardy breeds. We talked about this. I talked at length about this a minute ago. Those Yorkshires and those Chesters are really great animals, but they may not be ideal for outdoor settings, okay? You must rotate your pigs quickly or they will denude your land. This is a huge one too. Oh, someone wrote something in chat. 6 to 9 months. How long has a pig lived before slaughter size? A great question. And I didn't talk about this. Sorry, Sven, great question. When you buy your pigs, they should be weaned. They should be about 50 or 60 pounds when you get them. If you get them bigger, all the better, because that means the person selling them to you fed them bigger. Yes, about 6 months from that 50 pounds, you add 2 pounds a day is 120, that gets you up into 170 pounds. So, a little bit less than 6 months, you can finish a pig. If you go over that, you got problems. You're just putting fat on the back of it. That's going to get thrown away. And if you're breeding, fat pigs are not good either. They don't breed well. So yes, about 6 months is how long you're going to have your grower pigs before you're going to end up taking them to slaughter. Ideally, that's ideally. All right, let's see. Okay, Joe, what should you look for when looking to purchase feeders? So we were talking about this a little bit. I think that you want an active animal. You want a healthy bright-eye animal. You want an animal that's not standing alone. I mean, they could be a little scared, but you want to see them active. You want to see them eating, running around, pooping. They don't want to have diarrhea. You want to see all their hair on them, and you want to see them fleshed out a little bit. Obviously, babies are kind of skinnier as they grow and develop. This animal is going to be about 50 pounds. But the questions, I think, are really where you can deduce a lot of the quality of these animals. What were they fed? When were they vaccinated? Blah, blah, blah. That goes a really long way. And I cannot recommend enough going to visit a farm or go see pigs and interacting with them. If you have a friend, or if I'll give you some names of people you can call and visit, or if you want to learn, one good friend of mine is Nathan Alanach, All Family Farm in Sullivan County. I don't know where you guys are. He will talk your ear off. He has the worst Massachusetts Maine accent I've ever heard in my life. I'm from Massachusetts too, so tell him I said hello. Go down there and stare at his pigs. Let him look at them. He's going to try to sell you Berkshires. He calls them Berkshires. But if you go look at these pigs, you'll get an idea of what a healthy pig is. And that's how I started farming too, to let you know. I just started volunteering on farms. That's why I started farming. Joe's asking, will there be papers? Not unless you're buying pure breed, which you shouldn't be doing, in my opinion. You don't need any papers. You're just piggies that come along. If you're traveling overstate, you might need some papers. But for the most part, no.
Can I ask a question?
Hey, what's up?
Yes. What is the number of pigs per acre that you recommend when you're talking about like the rotational grazing? And then also you're saying you shouldn't return for 2 years. So ideally, how much land should you have per pig?
I can't answer that because I do not know, because every acre is so different. It's not like, it's a great question. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you. The way I do it, like I said, is 70% of the vegetation is used up. So if you have 1,000 pigs, you can still say with 70, when you only have 30% left, as if you have 2 pigs. An acre is a very large bit of land. If I was going to make a paddock, and again, I'm totally here to help you guys draw this stuff out. Let's say you have a whole acre. You're not going to use that much of it if you're going to rotate. You're going to make little squares to go around the whole thing, and however works your water system. So if you could grow many animals on an acre. The 2-year thing is not a hard and fast rule, but if you don't follow it, you're going to run into trouble, because if you come back the next year on the same land, it's going to look okay, but by the end of the year, it's going to be absolutely trash. But that 3rd year, there'll be nothing growing there. You'll have no vegetation. Another thing too, I forgot to mention is you need to rotate your animals in the woods. They will kill your trees very quickly. They do something called girdling, which means they'll chew the bark on the outside and it will kill the tree. And what happens is that tree dies over a period of 5 years and all the branches fall off it and will kill you or your pigs. They will compact the ground around the roots, and the roots will not be able to get nutrients, or they will gnaw the roots and kill them too. So especially in woods, like really rotating, being vigilant, like once a week or when 70% of the vegetation is gone. Keep in mind too, this rule is interesting because if you're in a pasture, it's going to take a lot more time to move through 70% of the vegetation, whether you're in the woods, because there's not as much vegetation in the woods. In my opinion, I think woods should be rested probably 10 times longer than pasture, because there's not much sunlight. It takes it longer to reproduce. Now that I think about it, damn. Okay, yeah. So it makes sense. So you really should be going slower in woods. So on 1 acre, you can have a ton of animals, but make your paddock the size that is conducive to you moving them easily. Make the squares easy. Make the ladder easy to walk up. Make the water easy. There's also a thing I'm going to send you guys from North Carolina, and they use a square format to do their rotation. So they take an acre, and this may help you guys a lot too. They split it into 2, then they split it into 4, then they split it into 8, and that's how they end up rotating the pigs. Actually, sorry, they do it opposite. They start with like 16, then they go to 8, then to 2, then to 1, and they've used that entire acre. This will make more sense when I send it to you. And I hope that answers that question. It's a really tough question, but the 70% rule is what I'm going to give you guys, because your acre could look a lot different than my acre. Sorry, I know that's a tough, I know everyone wants to know about that. Okay, we talked about that. Here's some pictures real quick. We saw this one at the top, but this one up the top with the mud, you can see how dirty that is, what a mess they can make. At the bottom, that looks like Salton's place, and it probably is. But you can see what they're doing to that ground. That's not going to recover quickly. So remember, Salton's running these animals on a lot. He's not coming back for many years. He's using the pigs to begin the preliminary clearing of lumber yards. So he goes, or he uses people's lands that are selling lumber, or after they've lumbered it. One of the great things about farming in New York is what's called a tax exemption. I'm assuming all you guys know about this, but I rent 300 acres and I don't pay anything for it. The reason is because they get an exemption on that land because it's used for ag. And you can too if you own the land. So and also my point is, if you're going to rent land or someone wants you to help, if you want to offer to run pigs on your neighbor's land, he's not using it, they just logged it, and you would like, hey, put the pigs over there, we'll leave them over there for the year, it'd be great. It's a win-win for everybody. So if you want to know more about that, I'm happy to talk about it. This is only a couple of days of this pigs on here. They've used more than 70% of their vegetation, haven't they? They should have moved already. Look at next to that paddock where all that green grass is, okay? They're trying to get it, you can see. Number 3 is pigs have higher caloric requirements outside, so that supplemental feeding may be integral to them. So, whoops, sorry. Just keep that in mind. So if you can get some extra stuff, it can work really great for you, but it doesn't have to happen. You don't have to have the whey. I see someone came into the chat. Let me take a look. Do pig clean themselves? Sven, you got to elaborate, buddy. I don't know what you mean. Like a cat? Type something else in there for me. Give me some more. This is where the deep bedding really comes into, guys. So that's where the deep bedding can come in, because they'll keep the pigs warm. And they do eat a lot of hay. It's weird. They're very susceptible to chills when they're cold too. Very. They need a heat lamp. Please, if you're going to set up a heat lamp, contact me so I can give you warning stuff about it. I burnt down a brooder. There's going to be 1 million fires this year from it. So keep out for it, or keep an eye on it. Dude, and if pigs clean themselves, yeah, pigs are really clean animals. They smell sweet. They have a sweetness to their body, which you will smell. It's kind of like a dog has a smell. They're not dirty at all. They're very clean. skin-wise, they're just like a human. In fact, they use them in a lot of human experiments. And I've actually seen some pictures, and I don't agree with this, but I've seen some tattooed pigs. I think maybe the pigs were dead when they tattooed them. But I've heard of people tattooing pigs because the skin is so similar. So, okay, we talked about that. There's some piggies eating whey. Oh, here you go, Sven. They like to get muddy, make a mess. Do we need to bathe them? No, you don't need to bathe them. Nature has provided these animals the beautiful capacity to care for themselves. No, you don't need to bathe them. They're fine. They do get muddy, and they like to be muddy in the summer because also it keeps bugs off them. Think about that. When you're muddy, and humans do this, you put mud on, the mosquitoes aren't as bad. No, they don't need to be cleaned ever. They're fine. The rain will clean them off. But they don't even smell bad in the summer. Okay, we talked about this. Interesting picture of pigs eating a lot of pumpkins. Remember, you can only supplement, not substitutes. If they get these pumpkins, that's great, but you still need to have their full ration in front of them. And they still will eat this, believe me. They are pigs. This is a pig rooting around in garbage. It's very common around the world to see livestock in garbage, but pigs are especially common because they're really good at doing it. All right, we talked about food stuff. This is like the packaging. I just want to show this picture of all the packaging you have to undo and sell that plastic, get rid of all that paper if you're going to burn it. This person's obviously dumping something out from a restaurant, but you know how I feel about that. I think it's dangerous, and I don't think it's worth it overall. While we're here, if you are going to sell to restaurants, get a contract. I can't tell you how many people I know that I've talked to chefs to be like, yeah, I'll buy 10 pigs from you. Let's just put me down for 5. Oh, and then when the time comes, you butcher them. I don't know. I can't afford that anymore. That's not what I'm looking for. Restaurants want the best stuff for the cheapest amount of money, and the chefs usually don't own the restaurant. So they can't typically make the big boys, like big decisions. They typically want only the best stuff. They don't want your hams. They only want the filet, and they only want really good bacon or back fat. And they want it for the cheapest amount of money. The restaurants run really small margins, so they're not willing to pay a lot of money, and I get it. So if you come in with a plan, half of it's going to be, if it's a business, half is going to be productions, half's going to be marketing. We're going to talk about all that. And that's where this comes in. You must market as a premium product, in retail modalities. You have to sell it for what it's worth. We got to know what, you can't just say my neighbor down the street sells bacon for $8, so am I. You can never say the grocery store sells it for this much, because you cannot compete with those folks. They own everything. They own the feed, they own the pigs, they own the buildings, they own the farmer, in my opinion, in some cases. You need to go off your product, how much it costs you to make it, and what your cost of production is, okay? But it has to be marketed in premium modalities. You're not going to sell this next to other pork at restaurants, but you may be able to do a really awesome CSA with a vegetable partnership. You may be able to sell it to farmers markets, although I personally hate farmers markets. There's a lot of different ways that you can sell your, I mean, I've seen bacon for 16 bucks a pound up here. I'm not saying yours should be that. I think you need to factor in a lot of different things. You do your marketing analysis, but you can get more for your bacon than you think, believe me. This is a whole class in itself. I'm going to talk about this for 1 second. There's a reason I hate farmers market, because they're not very efficient. So when we ranked kind of unofficially these different ways to sell stuff, whether it's on your farm or third party or farmers markets, we rated on how long it takes you to do it, your labor, how much money you can make from it, effort. There are a lot of different things. I'm not going to get onto it. This is what we found. On farm was the best way and most efficient way to sell your product. Like an on-farm shed, where there's an honor system, whether you open it 1 day a week. CSAs were the second most efficient and profit-producing way to make money, and web sales were the third. That means like having stuff online, saying we'll ship to you, although that's a whole other ballgame, or just saying pick out what you want in your basket and we'll deliver to this parking lot on Tuesday. There's a really big divide here. On-farm sales, CSA, and web sales are really good. Farmers market, third party, and wholesale are a big bad. There's a huge line between web sales and farmers markets right there. Third party wholesalers are aggregators like Field Goods, things like that. They're not bad, but I'm saying for your marketing modality, it doesn't make sense maybe as a new beginning grower. So they buy your product and they sell it for more money to other people, but they deliver to them. Then wholesale is obviously wholesale. Farmers markets are a pain in the butt because you have to pay for them. You have to be there every week or be penalized. They take a lot of work and transportation. That food has to be kept cold and stored somewhere. And it's just tough. And, you know, it stinks. When I was farming, I'm farming full time, but when I was really farming full time, I was farming full time, working full time, then Saturday and Sunday were taken up at farmers markets. I didn't want to do that. So I had to find a way to sell my animals, which I do web sales now. And by the way, I slaughtered a cow last week and I sold all of it eighths in 2 days. That's the kind of market we're looking at for clean meat. I don't like that word, not clean meat. Let's just say homestead meat, or just, local meat. Oh, all right. One more thing I got to preach about. Organic versus non-organic. Organic's fine, whatever. But in my opinion, you can't do any better than buying local. So I don't know if you remember 2 years ago, there was like 80,000 tons of organic feed that turned organic in the middle of the ocean on its way here from Turkey. Some of the organic feed is coming from Brazil, where they just rip up a rainforest, ship it up here and call it organic. Well, that's great, but what did that really come from? But again, you have local folks growing corn. They've been doing it for hundreds of years and growing barley and wheat and soy, and they sell it to a local mill and they make it there. That makes a lot of sense to me, keeping that money local. Also, organic is about double the price. So what are you really getting when you're buying organic feed? Now, there are 2 or 3 amazing local organic producers around here. There's one, Lightning Tree Farm. There's one in Hudson, Stonehouse Farm. And there's another one around somewhere. Vermont has one. So they're local. I fully think you should support them. But if you are going to think about organic, think about what you're doing, where it's coming from, and why you're doing it, because it is a big deal. If you're going to pay double the amount of money, you better be getting a product that you're happy with. Train the pig to the fence. Your pigs will get out. Your pigs will get out. What do? Let me preach again. You need to have a dedicated bucket for the pigs. So I don't care what it is. Just get a big blue or white, whatever, 5-gallon bucket. And as you get to know the pigs, walk around the pasture, walk around their paddock, and give them food out of there so they know that you have food in that bucket. So when they get out, they will walk to get that bucket. I have literally walked pigs over a mile that have gotten out because they like to explore with that bucket. It works great. On that same note, if you're in the paddock, if you're in the pen with the pigs and they nudge you or bump you or bite you to get that food, terminate the trial immediately. Leave and do not even look at them. No attention, nothing, no food. Because if they learn they can push you over and get that bucket, they will do it. I've seen it happen. It's terrifying. So bring them treats when they're acting nice. Start petting them. They love to get scratched behind their ears. Give them all kinds of scratches. I miss petting pigs. They're so fun. And when they're being nice, if they're not, take the food away. But train them to a bucket and make sure they know that there's food in that bucket at all times. Also, like I was saying with the trailer, if you feed them on the trailer, you can try to walk them with the bucket, but the trailer is so scary they might not follow the bucket. So we talked at length about this. These are some of my pigs hanging. Eagle Bridge. We have a map of all the USDA facilities in the state. Again, like I said, they're all booked up for the year anyway. But I'm happy to show that on the map. That was scheduled in advance. I've had some really, really great experiences with butchers, and I've had some nightmare scenarios. You don't really have a choice now because we're kind of stuck. But if you do have a choice of butchers, talk to your local farmer friends and see who's really nice and who's not. You need to monitor your land. I keep talking about this, and this is some pig damage or pig disturbance. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you think you're going to have your pigs out there and then be able to drive a car or a tractor over it, you're sorely mistaken. They're going to rut and groove your land and compact it. So it's not going to be really, no matter what, you're still going to have to, no matter what permaculture book you read that tells you these, and I mean, nothing against permaculture, but I just get a lot of these calls now to tell you these pigs are going to plow your ground. It's not true. They're going to mess it up. You're still going to need to plow it. You're still going to need to incorporate other minerals and manure into that soil before it's ready for planting vegetables or anything else you want to plant. They're not a machine. They're an animal. They just eat and poop, and they have a lot of fun. They're not attractive. And then number 10 is to become sustainable. Okay, you're not sustainable if you run out of money and you can't make anymore. My job is to make you sustainable. I want you to make money. I want you to stay in business. If you run out of energy, if you overdo it, you're not sustainable. This has happened to me. If you burn yourself out, it's bad. If the best part of your day is not going to the farm typically, then you need to get out. You need a break. If you run out of land, you're not sustainable. What I mean by that is if you have that acre and you've run it down, running pigs over too much, that's not sustainable. You're going to have NRCS come knocking at your door because you're ruining the New York City watershed. You're going to have local sheriffs come because there's poop in someone's yard. Who knows? If you run out of product unplanned, you're not sustainable. So if you don't plan well enough to have as many pigs as you need for the year, then you're not going to make it, right? So that is my presentation, folks. I just talked a lot. My voice is already giving out. I'm going to send you these presentations via PDF, and I'm also going to send you a big beginner pig checklist. And I also want to hear from you. If you want to get started, send me an email. Let's chat on the phone. Like half my day, I just put on my headphones and I talk to folks about their farming needs, issues, and problems. That's my job. I'm not going to help you in a med emergency or medical. That's for your vet. But take a look at what I send you. Make a plan. If you want to have pigs this year, contact me and I'll look at it and we can go over it together. But before I close this out, you guys have anything you want to talk about?
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
When you're pasturing pigs, if you have wet spots on your pasture or some lower, you know, some areas that tend to be a little wetter after rain, should you avoid using that land, or do you just need to be a little more careful?
What are you doing with that land?
Uh,
After,
Sorry, can you repeat that?
sorry, what are you going to do with that land once the pigs are off it?
I think it would be resting. It would just be like a hay
Yeah.
field.
So no, okay. Yeah. Do you make hay currently?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, so the pigs should not be in your hayland ever because they're going to rut it. There's no way you're going to be able to drive a tractor over it. And if you hire someone, they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's going to be too rutted. So I would not even put the pigs on a hay pasture. That's where they're incompatible. It's one of those spots. If it's just a rested land, then don't worry about the water because you're making an impact based on vegetation. That's why we talk about this. So water's okay, but when 70% of the vegetation is gone, that's when they get them off because that's just they won't give them enough time to get into that water and really compact it. And really, does that make sense?
Yep. No, it does. Thank you.
Nothing really wrong with water. They'd probably like a little bit of water.
Okay. And then I had one other question.
Sure.
With when you're training the pigs and you have you know, some sort of a more robust
Yep.
fencing or outside of the electric,
Yeah.
how much space do you leave between the electric and that other
Oh, I
barrier?
try to get it as close. Actually, you know what? That's a really great question. I tell you the truth, I changed my mind on this a while ago. I forgot. I used to put it really close, but then I started giving them space to be in that space because God, I wouldn't want them to get in there and keep getting shocked over and over again. So give them enough space, one pig length in there, and they're
Okay.
getting small. Remember, so
Okay. All right. Thank
you
you.
check on them. Like I usually, when I bring intake animals, I bring a book and I sit there because I want them to start to get to know me. I want to keep an eye on them, and if they do squeeze through that electric area, you can push them back in really easy.
Okay. Thanks.
Travis, you guys got something?
Yeah, I have a couple of breeding questions.
Okay.
So, with the breeding, so the boar, how far out or how close should you or should you not breed to their young? So how often should you rotate out your boar?
Oh, line breeding. I do not know the exact answer to that question, but I can find you some information on it. It's called line breeding. If you just type in line breeding pigs, it'll let you know. People have a lot of different opinions on that. Some would say none, and some will say 5. So take a look at. I can send you something too. I don't know. Sorry. What else
That's
you got?
okay.
Maybe I can do the next one.
Well, it was another breeding question. So
That's all right.
I guess it relates to selecting what ones to keep for breeding and then what ones to sell for feeders or to cull. What characteristics or traits do you consider, or if you're lacking, what breed, like you talked about mixed breed. So what should you, if you're wanting a more prolific sow, what breed should we try to mix in? If we're focusing on carcass, what one would we recommend breeding in?
So that's a great question, but you're making a pretty classic mistake that beginning breeders make is you need to focus on one trait at a time. You can't improve more than one. So if you want to have a prolific pig, that's one thing, but what I recommend is you breed the pigs that come from or were successfully bred by their mother. Like she came out, she didn't lose any piglets, she didn't roll on them. And that's up to you guys if you're going to use the maternity cage thing, I recommend that you feeder if you are going to breed, and Travis or whatever your guy's name is, I'll send you the breeding presentation too, so you can take a look at it. You can come back and talk to me about it. So break down your traits, what you want, and you want to breed the animals that do the best on your system because you don't know who that's going to be yet. Get them there, see how they do, who puts the weight on, who's a good mom, and again, one thing at a time. And and also, sorry, the other thing I'll say is match what you want to what you're getting. So if you're a breeding farm, you're going to want a lot of piglets, but you may not want the fattest ones because you can't get the fat sows pregnant. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's a big question. That's advanced stuff. So
this cool. This is our first time going out and getting, and I know you said you have to figure out what's right for your land and make adjustments. But if I'm going to contact somebody or go look at a farm to buy a couple pigs, what should my first trait be at selecting a pig?
What are you going to do with them?
I think originally we just want to see, like, we want to do feeders, and then see what worked on our land, what didn't, and then maybe eventually try to get a sow and do our own farrowing.
So this first year, you're not really, what you're only concerned about is picking the best piglets out of that litter, right? You're not concerned about breeding. Because
Right.
Okay. So yeah, you want them alert. You want them happy. You don't want to see any diarrhea. You want to see them to look conformation. You want to see they look good. You can count their teats too, which would be important for some people. So having 12 teats, and you can count the boys too. They're part of that also. Reproductive health, honestly, taking a look at their back end can go a long way. If you are breeding, you're going to spend an awful lot of time staring at sow's vulva. It's true. It's actually a really good way to tell when they're going to birth. So that's important. And then sometimes you're just going to see something you like. And there's always a runt. You don't want the runt generally because the runt's going to be less healthy. There always is one. They're usually not havable.
Okay. All right. So like you were saying, like if we were going somewhere, you want to make sure you're looking at the full litter. We're not getting like the end of the litter. So if we're walking in, we're like, oh, okay, that sow only had 3 piglets. Maybe they've already sold a bunch, or that's abnormal. We don't want that litter. We're going to another place.
Yes, great. That's great intuition. You're absolutely right. Awesome. That's great. Sometimes there may only be 3 left though. So, especially in this market. But yeah, if you can get them quick, that's great.
And so you are here in Central New York, right? You live here in Central New York, your farm's here in Central New York?
I'm in Hudson.
Okay. I was just thinking because, right, I mean, the best place to know what breed works best for your area is who's already raising the breeds currently in your area to match your weather. So what are you raising? I don't know. Did you say in the beginning what pigs?
No, I don't have any now, but any of the pigs you can get around here are going to be fine for you outdoors. We're not in an extreme environment in New York, as much as we may think it is. As long as they have after and that deep bedding, they'll be just fine, whoever you get.
Okay.
I don't recommend you go out and buy are you raising out on pasture?
Well,
Or outdoors?
we have like 5 acres and we're having someone come soon to help us try to put a fence up. And the other question I had for you real quick is, do you have any presentations of we keep going back and forth of how we want to set up the fencing system. And I didn't know if you had any diagrams.
Let's talk. How about we talk tomorrow on the phone? We can go through all of it.
Okay, cool. You're the awesome. Thank you.
I will will you do me a favor and email me after this? Because after this, I'm going to go drink a beer because I'm exhausted. And then I'll get to you.
Me too.
And we can either talk this weekend or tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
No problem. That's what I'm here for. Fencing is a good question, though. What else, guys? Yeah, we talked about a lot. So take a breath. Take it in. I'll send you this email tomorrow, updates, and you can go through all this again. I'm going to send you a link to my favorite pig book that's free. It's a PDF. It's from Bangladesh. It's cool because it's written for non-English speakers, so it's a lot of pictures. So when I talk about reproductive health, it's literally going to have pictures of penises and stuff. There's the way they're supposed to look and the way they're not. You'll learn a lot from it. Oh, other tip. Do you know how to pick up a piglet? When you go buy these weaned piglets, they're going to be 50 pounds. You can't pick them up like a baby. The best way to do it is pick them up by their hind legs and hold them like this. That's not easy either. Do not forget, they're going to scream like you were murdering them. They're going to scream so loud, it's going to terrify you. And the mama might come running. Get your truck backed up or whatever you're putting them in, get it ready to go. And then get everybody ready. Get somebody blocking mom if you need to, even with a battle board. And then scoop them up and get them in. They're fast. Do not underestimate a pig. They're way faster and probably smarter than me. All right, if that's all you guys got, then that's it. This is our presentation. We went through a lot. Please contact me. I'm here to help you. I want to hear from you. I can talk about farm all day long, as you can see. But I'm tired of talking now. It's nice to meet you guys. Please contact me, and I will send this stuff out tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
No problem.